Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1, Hostile Takeover, written by Fox Corp. Within the secretive chambers of the Terraformer Corporation, 3 suited humans walked in unison. Each of the 3 had been summoned by Bobby Brown, de facto owner of the Terraformer Corporation, the largest private terraforming and colonization entity in Terran space. Bobby and his fellow shareholders wished to turn Terraformer into the largest planetary transformation entity in the Milky Way. These 3 individuals have the power to make it happen. Emily Snow, CEO of Standard Energy, the largest energy conglomerate in the known galaxy, formed in 2070 in search of new fossil fuel deposits, as well as to capitalize on the fusion market. It's a massive conglomerate of countless pre-unification energy giants, Saudi Aramco, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BP unified into a singular energy titan. They've completely monopolized the energy market through ruthless business practices. Almost nothing is below this profit-hungry fiend. William Tracker, chairman of the board for Terran Private Defense, acting as a PMC for anyone willing to pay. They've been involved in conflicts from the shoulder of Orion all the way up to the RimWorlds. Practically every military in the galaxy relies on their hardware and contractors for ships and maintenance. Without them, no military would be capable of putting up a fight. Formed in late 2052, with the collapse of the conventional military-industrial complexes, the companies of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, North Corp Grumman, and Raytheon, General Dynamics, and BAE Systems clung together to survive. Now, they are nigh unstoppable. The final of the 3, Jonathan Schmidt, CEO of the Bank of Terror, formed in 2175 by both human and grand law banks. It makes up over 75% of the private banking sector, the bank of choice for dictatorships, republics, and everyone in between. This bank had the power to swing money like a hammer, giving those in need, making ungodly profits along the way. Escorted by a small army of security personnel, the 3 reached the end of the spacious hallway. They reached a large door labeled Bobby Brown, majority shareholder. One of the entourage of security opened the door, and the 3 filtered into the massive office of Bobby Brown. Massive windows filtered in the light of the Terran sunset, a crimson sun just beginning to dip below the horizon of the gargantuan cityscape of Greater Chicago. One of the 4 gargantuan swaths of Ecumene within the old borders of the United States, covering an area of Indianapolis to Minneapolis. The city knew no bounds. The view from the 5-mile-high Terraformer Tower was spectacular, but the 3 individuals weren't there for the view.
Welcome. It's great to see you all once again. I wish this meeting was a more casual occasion, but we have some very serious business to attend to.
Bobby's booming voice reverberated throughout the room.
Please have a seat and enjoy the champagne. There is much to discuss.
The 3 sat down. None helped themselves to the champagne provided. Bobby didn't seem to mind and grabbed a full glass of champagne. He grabbed a remote and began projecting a scene of a planet labeled Dawn.
As I'm sure many of you know, we've been involved in terraforming projects within the Tactile Republic for over 150 years. As I'm sure you also know, the Republic has recently taken an authoritarian communist turn. Several of our projects have been cut off from the sudden and violent regime change.
His speech was interjected by William Tracker. It is a very unfortunate situation. However, our profit margins have only increased from this change in power. This new state is very security cautious, after all. What's in it for me?
I'm glad you asked. As a token of good faith, I'm offering through all 3 companies a 5% stake in Terraformer Corp. But should you decide to cooperate?
All 3 straightened in their chairs and leaned forward. Bobby let a beaming smile creep across his face.
I knew that would get your attention.
He continued to the next slide of his presentation.
The new tactile state has multiple newly government-bought companies, each of which is a direct competitor to our efforts.
Bobby paused to take a long drink of his champagne.
We have the power to completely shut down these companies through sheer economic force. demanding the sale of said companies in order to restart the flow of resources and cash into their new state.
Bobby changed the slide again.
The Tactile Energy Cooperative, the main lifeline of the Tactile state. If you, Emily Slow, begin selling your energy and materials for 50% less, it'll completely tank their entire government supply of cash.
Bobby downed his remaining champagne.
They will then turn to you, Jonathan Smith, for loans and monetary assistance to stay afloat. Should you deny them, you will force them into action.
William interjected once again, forcing them to declare war. This might just work.
Exactly, Bobby replied. When they start moving their fleets, recall their maintenance technicians, and stop sending new hardware, their entire fleet of ships will be rendered inoperable within weeks.
And when all of this is said and done, asked Schmidt, what then?
You swoop in and buy out all of their banks. They'll be forced to sell off their assets in a desperate attempt to stay in power,
said Bobby coolly.
You'll grow your market to a populace of trillions.
I'll do the same, Emily added. Their resource exports are massive. The potential profit from this venture. Bobby finished the sentence for her.
Are astronomical.
He poured himself another glass of champagne.
I'll have my terraforming ventures. You'll all have your new, friendlier markets to operate in. Lots of profit and a 5% share in Terraformer.
The three joined Bobby in a toast to the future and drank their glasses of champagne fully. It took only a matter of months for the Tactile state to fully collapse. Their revenue stream was unexpectedly decimated by Standard Energy. When the Empire turned towards the Bank of Terror for a bailout, they were denied. War was the only option. Tactile ships began maneuvering towards Standard Energy assets, but their life support was pulled when Terran private defense bailed, taking all of their technicians and crewmen with them. The Tactile state was left with a crippled economy and worthless companies. In a final last-dish attempt to make enough money to scrape by, they put their government industries up for sale. It came up as no surprise to the galaxy when all of the companies were swooped up by the Terran companies that caused all the destruction in the first place. After selling their companies, the Tactile were at the mercy of the Terran conglomerates. Expectedly, they were completely shut off from the vital resources. The governments collapsed in a matter of days, replaced with a friendly state of pro-Terran politicians. The Terran conglomerate, as the four companies were now known, had pulled off the first hostile takeover of an entire solar empire in a process known today as paper warfare. End of story. Story number 2. The First Fight, written by Rosie013. The inky oblivion slowly receded into mere nothingness, only to be replaced with an unknown, agonizing noise on the very edge of hearing. It screeched and tittered with the promise of understanding, but somehow remained elusive, preferring to taunt and flaunt from the safety of the unknown. It seemed to be everywhere and nowhere all at once, all around, but from no particular direction. After an eternity, the slow, soft sensation of warmth grew into being. It came from nowhere, but somehow associated itself with doubt, a concept that meant nothing in the nothingness of existence. The warmth spread outwards from the center, slow and sensual, until all the eternities felt its caress. Its comforting embrace felt right, and all was as it should be. Suddenly, pure and raw, thrust itself into the dark, brutally dispelling the peace. It slashed apart the nothingness with hard, straight lines of amber yellow and pale red. Reality peeled away from the assault, desperately retreating down to the familiar, comforting dark. The dark and warmth was welcoming and accommodating, but something had changed. In the dark, a new sensation had written itself into being, a sensation that defied definition. It was warmth, but coarse. It fought change and clung tightly to all that was, entrapping darkness and warmth against one another. Eventually, agony made itself known, slowly but insistent, permeating the darkness. It came in leaps and bounds, clustering randomly across space and time.
Reality wreathed in desperation, shaking loose warmth and exposing itself to light in its bid for release. Agony skulked away into the dull throbbing, secretly pleased at being sated by the thrashing of all of existence. The thrashing has not gone unnoticed, however, and new sensations and feelings began to exist faster and faster, more than could be named in the time it took for them to be recognized. They came relentlessly, gaining pace until all began to blur into one, until suddenly they collided into a singular, perfect, unified moment. David awoke and climbed out of bed, taking the time to shut off his alarm clock. The first fight of his day had been won. End of story.
I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.